So there were 8 of us, my husband Ray and I, and 3 other couples meeting at the offices of our adoption agency. We didn't know each other yet, but we all knew and loved the person we were there to meet, the head of our adoption agency, Linda. Linda had held our hands for 2 grueling years of adoption paperwork. And now she had called us together because very soon the 8 of us were going to fly to Vietnam and bring home our babies. Or in the case of me and Ray, bring home an almost 2-year-old toddler that we were adopting that we were naming Owen. So Linda, in her very warm maternal way, walked us through what the trip was going to be like, what would happen when we landed, when we would go to the orphanage, when we would have the adoption ceremony. And she left a lot of time for questions because we had a lot, like, am I going to have Wi-Fi? What present do we need to bring the orphanage officials? And the answer to that one is always oil of Olay. We got almost to the end of the meeting when one of the parents-to-be asked this question. So Linda, for that long 14-hour plane ride on the way back, what do you recommend we give the babies to knock them out? Would Benadryl be okay? Well, Linda got this look on her face of horror and also regret, like, I can't believe I'm letting you 8 people have babies. But she got her composure back, and then she told us in no uncertain terms were we to drug our children. So 2 weeks later, we're in the departure lounge at Dulles, the 8 of us, and we start laughing about that incident. And somebody says, all right, who packed the Benadryl? And someone else said, well, if you did, don't tell Linda. And that phrase, don't tell Linda, became the catchphrase for the entire trip. Anytime anybody did anything questionable or just kind of like new parent clueless, we'd look at each other and we'd say, don't tell Linda. And it started like almost immediately on the flight over because, well, you know, it's a long flight. We were drinking and we'd look at each other and we'd be like, don't tell Linda. Or, you know, those long nights we were walking the hallways of our hotels, holding these crying babies we could not comfort. And we'd look at each other in exhaustion as we passed and we'd say, don't tell Linda. So we got towards the end of the trip, and the only thing we had left to do was go to the US Embassy in Hanoi and get the kids' immigration papers, and then we could fly home. But we had some downtime before that meeting. So we went to our hotel concierge and we said we'd like to do some sightseeing. And she suggested Ha Long Bay. Now, if you're not familiar with Ha Long Bay, it's this huge bay in the northern part of Vietnam with these emerald green waters and thousands of these limestone islands. Some are like 50 feet high, some are hundreds of feet high, and they all have rainforests on the top, and it's just spectacular. It looks like a other world. And the concierge says, we work with 3 companies that do overnight cruises in Ha Long Bay, a luxury one, a mid-range one, and a budget one. Well, we'd been in Vietnam for over 3 weeks at this point. We were like, luxury, that's for tourists. But, you know, maybe budget, not so good with babies. So we did the mid-range. And the next day, the van took us up to Ha Long Bay and we found our boat, and yeah, it wasn't fancy, but you know, it was fine. And pretty soon we were out in the bay, and I mean, it's just, the pictures don't do it justice. Everything was great. And after a couple of hours, the captain took the boat into this little cove and said that there were caves in the island right ahead of us if we wanted to explore. So I put Owen in the Snuggly and strapped it on my chest, and everybody else suited up with their babies, and we hopped off the boat and went and checked out the caves. And then when we came back to get back on the boat, I noticed 2 things. First, there were a lot more boats in the cove. And second, the tide had come in. Our boat was way out in the water. So we were like, well, what are we supposed to do? Are we going to wait till the other boats leave and it'll come in, or are they going to send a dinghy? And we look and we see the captain and the crew standing on the deck, and they're going like this. And then they're going like this. And we realize we've got to wade out to the boat. So that's what we do. We start wading, and pretty soon the water's over my ankles and up to my knees, and then it's over my knees. And by the time we get to the boat, it's up over our waists. And now we have a new problem, which is like, how are we going to get back on the boat? Because, you know, when we got off the boat, it was just this short little hop down. And now the deck is way, way above us. So the captain throws down this, I mean, it would be generous to call it a ladder, but we're just going to call it a ladder made out of this old rope. And I'm thinking, at this point, it seems a little dicey to take a squirmy toddler out of the snuggly and hand him up there. So I'm just going to have to climb this ladder. So I'm climbing and climbing, and I'm thinking, please, God, don't let me fall into the water. And maybe you could give me that upper body strength I've always wanted right now. And I get to the top rung, but I can't like just throw myself on the deck, like, you know, belly first, because baby's right here. So I have to do this like pirouette and throw myself back, and I land on the deck with this plop. It was not my most graceful moment. I think I was wearing a skirt, but I was back on the boat. Everything was fine. Everybody else got back on the boat. And then we did what any rational first-time parents would have done in that situation. We headed straight for the bar. We were pretty rattled from the whole experience, but after a few Vietnamese beers and this really yummy dinner that the crew had cooked from fish that they had caught over the side of the boat, we all mellowed out. And then we decided to call it a night. So we headed below deck, and Ray and I found our cabin, and we opened the door and we flipped on the light, and there were roaches everywhere. I don't know how many there were. I'm going to say a bazillion. They were on the bed, they were on the floor, they were on the walls, they're scurrying all around. And I looked at Ray and I said, oh my God, do you think everybody else? And then I hear one of the moms give out this blood-curdling scream. Yeah, they got roaches too. So we all met in the hall, and we were saying, well, what are we gonna do? Well, one of the moms went into mama bear mode immediately, and she said, I'm gonna go talk to the captain. So she marches up above deck, and she comes back down a few minutes later, and she says, well, I told the captain we can't have the babies sleeping in cabins with all these roaches. And he said to me, don't worry, madame. As soon as we turn off the lights in the kitchen, they're all gonna go right there. Ugh. So what could we do? We made tents out of the sheets. We tucked them into the sides of the bed real tightly. We put the babies in there. We left the lights on all night long, and no one got any sleep because we were on roach patrol. And the next morning, nobody wanted to eat breakfast, cooked in a kitchen where the roaches had been partying all night. And it was rainy, and it was gray, and Ha Long Bay had lost all its charm for me. All I wanted to do was get off this damn boat and go home. So a few hours later, the boat docks in Ha Long Bay Harbor, and I'm looking around at all the luxury boats that are docking, and we find our mid-range travel company's 15-seat passenger van, which I shit you not, they put 23 people in, plus luggage. And we ride back to Hanoi in defeated silence, just relieved that no babies drowned or got eaten by roaches. And even though we weren't talking, we were all thinking the same thing. There's no way we're telling Linda. Thank you.